Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Phoenix, Rogue and Laura? Part 2. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Once the girls had left, Naruto once more smirked at the group, many of who were still slightly in shock at what had transpired. Not only did he just have a massive makeout session with Jean's evil counterpart, he was also in the company of a Logan clone, and he apparently knew how to teach Rogue to control her powers. It was a little much to process, even for the teachers. They were all snapped out of their specific thoughts by the voice of the one who had turned their lives upside down. You know, you kids are welcome to go with them. If you don't mind, I'd prefer to have this discussion with the adults only, said Naruto, never taking his gaze away from Logan and Aurora. Logan just gave a nod to the students, and they went after the three girls, though not before each one sent a death glare at Naruto, though Kitty was having a bit of trouble, as she apparently liked his Sasuke form more than his normal one. Once they were all out of earshot, Naruto indicated for the two to sit, which Aurora did, Logan preferring to stand. Now then, down to business. Rogue will be staying with me and learning to control her powers, something she couldn't learn at the Institute. She is staying with me of her own free will, and she is well aware that she may leave at any time. I know you have files on all the students, so you can add this to yours. Fox made a few hand signs, and a folder appeared in a puff of smoke. Passing it to Aurora, he continued. We were extremely lucky. She could have died from my power, and it was partially my fault for messing with Xavier's mind. Which reminds me. How did you get in Chuck's mind anyway without him sensing anything? Asked Logan. You'll find my mental ability surpass even his, though eye contact must be made. The eyes are the windows into the soul, after all. Anyways, Rogue now possesses incredible strength, increased agility, and she also possesses a slight healing factor and higher senses, though nowhere near the level of my own or Logan's. If you want, I'll send you a full, more detailed file once we discover all the abilities she has obtained. You will note, however, that as far as I know, these changes are permanent. Now, onto the moment that I know Logan is waiting for, the matter of Laura. At this, Logan's eyes narrowed. You see, she was created using remnant DNA samples of yours from the original Weapon X program. Logan now went wide-eyed and his claws extended slightly, though he regained control before he was caught. Anyway, she has all of Logan's abilities, as well as the adamantium grafted to her bones, though in a way that appears not to inhibit her ability to grow. She was trained since she could walk to be able to fight like a demon, and she was beaten, trained, and ignored so as to remove all traces of emotion from the girl. The group that did this, called Hydra, sent her to kill me. As you can see, they failed miserably. However, I offered Laura the chance to stay with me, and she accepted. There is a problem, however. And what problem would that be? Asked Aurora, her eyes having become like ice upon hearing Laura's story. When she found out about Logan, it appears that she blamed him for her predicament and is looking to kill him. And with her adamantium claws, she may be the only one aside from me and that helmet-headed freak Magna something that can. Magneto? You had contact with him? Said Logan, finally sitting down. More like he had contact with me. When I refused to work for his cause, he tried to rough me up a bit. I fought back, he sent a metal pipe through my chest, and I sent a wooden spike through his. Personally, I didn't think it would pierce his armor, but it did. Anyway, I'm getting way off topic. The point is, I promised Laura I would hunt down and kill every member of Hydra I could find that was in some part responsible for her torture. And you're telling us this why? And why would you give us a record on Rogue's new abilities? Asked Aurora warily, confused by the boy's actions. Fox merely sighed. Look, I'm not in it for world domination. I'm not in it because I'm evil. I'm merely looking out for number one and those in the innermost circles of my heart and mind. There may come a time when I need your help and I'm merely stocking up on favors. As for telling you my plans for Hydra, it's because I figure Logan might want to come with me. This got a raised eyebrow from the feral Canadian. And why would I be interested in your fight? He asked, though it was more like a growl. Because, I had my resident genius hack into Hydra already. Apparently several members were once part of the Weapon X program as well, and you may be able to get some more straight answers. Anyway, Phoenix and I are going out of town for a little while, and Laura has been enrolled at Bayville High. All I ask until we return is that the students know their place, because if I find out that they both have been harassed with questions or other remarks, I will take action of my own, finished Naruto darkly. But the shopping group. The X-Men eventually caught up with the three girls, and while they walked with them, they tried to at least keep a little distance. They had no idea what Laura could do, and they had fought Phoenix on several occasions. They had also seen what Rogue was now capable of. They thought she was bad when she was angry before, now she could break them in half. Of the X-Men though, one mind, specifically a telepathic mind, was curious and was desperately looking for some answers to everything. And so, Jean did the unthinkable. She started up a conversation with Phoenix. "So, what exactly is our relationship? You were a part of me once, right?" she asked, only getting a chuckle in response. "Well, for all intents and purposes, let's just say I'm kind of an evil twin. One who is by far better looking." Phoenix chuckled once more at the look on both Jean's and Kitty's faces. "Like, before you dyed your hair, you look totally the same. How are you better looking?" asked Kitty. "First off, I didn't dye my hair. This is just a little trick I learned from Fox to change my appearance so I wouldn't be mistaken for the real Jean. As for being better looking, I caught Fox's eye, didn't I? And trust me when I say, he could have any girl he wanted, as many as he wanted." This got a blush from Rogue, who had remembered Phoenix's words from the night before. Fortunately, it went unnoticed by the group. They entered one of the larger stores in the mall and fanned out, with orders from Jean's self-proclaimed sexy or evil twin to meet at the checkout because she was the only one with a credit card. She then turned to Kitty and told her to find Laura some clothes, to which Kitty eagerly agreed and sent a cold shiver down Laura's spine as she was dragged off to get some more normal-looking clothes. That once more left Jean and Phoenix alone as the two also shopped for clothes. This produced an odd effect, however. Phoenix already contained most of Jean's memories. However, for some reason, Jean started having flashes of Phoenix's memories from her time with her own body. As if that wasn't weird enough, she began to hear Phoenix's thoughts even with the incredible barriers that the dark telepath had put around them. Phoenix also found that she too was hearing Jean's thoughts without trying. Eventually, she used all the focus she could muster to set up a barrier between the two. Just in time it would seem, as she couldn't afford to think anything else of Naruto while her counterpart was around. Eventually, they all met back at the checkout. Kurt and Evan had each gotten some new video games, Evan also getting a new skateboard and gear. Kitty and Laura returned. Kitty had managed to get Laura 10 new outfits. She had also gotten almost 25 for herself. Jean and Phoenix had each gotten 3 new outfits, and Rogue only bought a new pair of gloves and some more makeup. They eventually headed out back to the food court to find Fox and Aurora actually having a pleasant conversation, Logan listening in as well. Deciding not to interrupt them, they each went around, gathering a smorgasbord of foods and drinks, and settled at some tables a ways away. Once they began eating, Phoenix excused herself and went to somewhere, to where only she knew. Even Fox, who could see them, looked puzzled at his mate's behavior. She eventually came back with a new purse. However, the way she was clutching it made everybody believe there was something inside it. She sat down, and Kitty opened her mouth to ask, but one look from Phoenix, her hair flying wildly around before settling, forced the girl to keep silent. The group made some small talk, though the X-Men didn't dare look over at the opposing side. Although they seemed perfectly fine and nice, Phoenix had made it clear that they might still be enemies if of course Xavier was stupid enough to challenge her mate again. Fox suddenly laughed and even shook hands with Aurora, just getting a nod from Logan before walking over to the mixed group of the X-Men and his mate and 2 students. "Ladies, I believe it's time to go. Phoenix and I are leaving tonight and it would be nice if we could get some rest." He got nothing but glares from the X-Men and drool from Kitty, which Phoenix used her power to shove right back into Kitty's mouth, making the girl nearly choke. "Where are you going?" asked Jean. She may have been feeling incredible hate for the boy right now, but her curiosity always got the better of her. "Somewhere," was her only reply. "And I expect you to treat Rogue as you would normally, as well as make Laura feel welcome. After all, she'll be going to school with you." With that, he glanced around, grabbed hold of the girls and their things, and in a swirl of wind and a few leaves they had vanished. "Aw man. As much as I hate to admit it, his teleporting is so much cooler than mine," said Kurt, who as many times as he had seen it in the past few weeks, still looked on, mouth agape at Fox's particular mode of transportation. The next day. "Ah, so this is New York City. It makes the hidden leaf look like a few small huts," said Naruto as he looked down at the city, still in his fox guise. He was inwardly laughing though. He figured that it might be beneficial to get Phoenix to at least wear a mask, and she did choose one. However, it just covered her eyes, and he guessed that without it people would be able to easily tell who she was. It was kind of cute, however, that she at least went along with the whole mask thing to begin with. Normally, Naruto was a night person, but he figured he could at least explore the city beforehand. And with that Spider-Man guy running around, he figured his fox persona was just the thing to use. He had changed his outfit dramatically. "If you want to know what it looks like, you can PM me, and I'll still answer even though I'm on vacation," and was by far more comfortable. And according to Phoenix, far sexier. And speaking of his mate, she quietly slipped her arms around him from behind and pulled off his mask just enough to get a quick kiss before replacing it. "So, are we gonna make this fast and get home, or do we get to have a bit of a vacation?" asked Phoenix, smirking. "Oh, I think we can stay for a little while. After all, you forget I have some enforcers to recruit," replied Naruto. Quickly, he used one of his tails to give her a little slap on the ass and in reply, got a very lustful look from the girl. Knowing full well what was coming, he just stood with his arms out as his mate tackled him and they both went tumbling off the roof of the skyscraper. People looking on from below saw two people appear to be falling to their death before they seemed to flicker out of existence and unbeknownst to them, into a very comfy hotel bed. Unfortunately for Naruto and Phoenix, one of these people was a boy by the name of Peter Parker. Later that night, Naruto and Phoenix once more left and explored the city, Naruto jumping from rooftop to rooftop, Phoenix gliding behind him. They both stopped however, as an alarm was heard. Looking over the edge of a building, they saw what appeared to be a red and blue blur get blasted from bank through a brick wall. Out of the wall came another man, with a stripped green shirt and brown pants. He appeared to be muscular, and when he raised his hand, his fist suddenly morphed into giant hammer. He swung it down, only to have the red and blue figure that was Spider-Man dodge at the last second and shoot a strand of web at a fire hydrant. Jumping high in the air, he landed on the other side of the hydrant and yanked, actually tearing the metal and sending water at the other man, who upon getting wet, yelled in fright as his body seemed to be turning to mud. Naruto whistled. Sandman was definitely out. No enforcer position for him. He did want to test out the spider however, so he threw an exploding kunai toward him, only for him to dodge at the last second. Looking up, Peter saw the same strange people from earlier in the day, the ones who had fallen from the building and disappeared. Shooting two web lines, he used them like a slingshot and fired himself onto the building they were on. "Well now, that is impressive," said Fox, who merely bent down to examine the webbing. "Let's see what else you got." With that, he merely used the universal hand sign for "bring it on." Spider-Man leapt into the air and shot a web line at Naruto. The shinobi dodged and the web hit the roof of the building. Grabbing it, Naruto pulled sharply, pulling Spider-Man toward him. The wall crawler merely pushed his leg out and sent a kick to Naruto's chest, knocking him off the building. Acting quickly, Spidey jumped to the side to try and help Fox, but he was nowhere in sight. Peter crawled on the wall, looking for where the man had gotten to, only to be slammed into and knocked away. He launched a web and stuck to the wall, only to see Fox standing on the wall as one would stand on solid ground. "Hey, no fair pal," yelled Peter, "sticking to walls is my shtick." "Really?" said Fox in a bored tone. "Well, how about a compromise? I'll just get rid of the wall." If Peter was wondering what he meant, he didn't have long to figure it out. In Fox's hand was a glowing blue orb about the size of a grapefruit, which he slammed into the wall of the building. It was as if an explosion had triggered, completely blowing an entire section of wall off the building. Not even Peter's spider sense alerted him of what was to happen. He was blown across the street, shattering the window of an office building which he was thrown into. "A note to self," he said, standing up and rubbing his head, "don't get hit by blue light orbs." "Good advice," came a shout from the floor below. This time, Peter's spider sense fired off and he jumped away just in time to dodge one of Fox's tails that shot up through the floor like a spear at him. As he landed, he had to dodge again, as another tail broke through the floor to impale him. This time he grabbed it however. This continued until all 9 tails were brought through the floor and tied into a knot by our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Peter bent down and knocked on the floor. "Yeah," he said, "not so tough now that you're stuck." He was cut off however by a creaking sound. He realized right away what was happening and jumped away just in time to avoid the floor being pulled down underneath him. He jumped down to find Fox, but the guy was once again nowhere to be found. Turning, Peter saw another shattered window. Jumping to it, he saw Fox waiting there with a girl, as if he had never left the rooftop. Suddenly, Peter's spider sense went off again, and he quickly flipped down and stuck to the wall below. Looking up, he saw Fox in all his glory, but looking back to the rooftop, he once more saw Fox and the red head, this time waving at him. "Okay, I must have him my head harder than I thought earlier," said Peter. "No," said the fox above him, who merely walked out on the side of the building, his feet sticking to the side with ease. "Your head is just fine." There just came a voice from below him, which when he turned out to be another fox. The textbook definition said another fox that appeared on his side. Of a one-man army finished yet another fox, appearing on the other side of him. "Okay, this could be bad," said Peter. "You think?" said one of the foxes, before they all began attacking with their tails. Even with his reflexes and spider sense, Peter had trouble keeping up, weaving and dodging the tails as they were sent at him like spears. Getting an idea, Peter let himself fall from the building, knocking into one of the foxes, who he then kicked in the face. Using it to stand on, he propelled himself up into the fox above him, delivering a major headbutt to this one's head. But to his surprise, he passed right through it as the fox burst into smoke. Looking down, he saw that the one he had hit before was also gone. Spinning in the air, Peter sent 2 globs of impact webbing at the other 2, causing them to disappear in a puff of smoke as well. Re-sticking to the wall, he looked over to the original Fox and the girl, who were applauding. Peter jumped from the building side and launched himself all the way to the rooftop they were on. "Impressive, keeping up with me, even if I'm not going all out, is no easy feat," said Fox. "So, you gonna tell me who you are, or can I just assume you're Tombstone's latest super freak?" said Peter. "Never heard of him," said Naruto. "I'm just a thief, plain and simple. Name's Fox. I have no doubt you've never heard of me. Bayville isn't exactly the biggest city in the country." "No, I know who you are. The Daily Bugle sent some reporters to Bayville to get the story on your robberies. I think I just found out how you're able to steal all this stuff," said Peter. "Guilty," said Naruto, chuckling. "Shadow clones are such good help. They don't need paid, they don't complain, they do whatever I say. One of the most useful techniques I've learned." "Technique? So you're saying this isn't some superpower, just some parlor trick?" said Peter. "Precisely. Just like your webbing," replied Fox, a smirk forming beneath his mask when he saw the shift in stance of his opponent. "I knew it," he continued. "Your other powers may be real, but I felt your wrist launchers beneath your costume." Before Peter could react, 2 shuriken were lodged into his web shooters, rendering them useless. "Uh-oh, looks like I broke your toys," said Fox in a mocking tone. Peter was hit by a blast from his spider sense as Fox vanished and reappeared before him, punching him in the gut, causing him to double over in pain. He was then hoisted into the air by the front of his costume. "Let me get you some new ones," whispered Fox in his ear, before Peter felt the most intense pain of his life course through him. Phoenix watched from the side as Naruto pumped a mix of human chakra and Yaki into Spider-Man. She knew what he was doing. His own chakra cancelled the lethal effect of the Yaki, and the Yaki, like with Rogue, sped up whatever mutation had taken hold of the boy. As it ended, Fox ripped off Peter's web shooters and held the hero over the edge of the building. Getting in close, Peter heard him whisper, "I hope you like them," before he was dropped off the building. Although he knew he no longer had his webs, his hands instinctually made the necessary action, and like magic, webs shot out of nothing more than his actual wrist. The web line connected to a building and Peter swung himself over, sticking to the wall. He was so intent on getting back to Fox, he almost didn't realize what had just happened. Getting back to the rooftop, he saw that Fox and his girlfriend were gone. It was only then that he fully comprehended what had happened. Sticking his hand out, he once more shot webbing from his own wrist. It unnerved him slightly, but at the same time felt fully natural to him. "Okay Fox, just what is it you've done to me?" he asked, before deciding to call it a night and head home. Fox was currently sitting at the bar in some bar and grill restaurant across town, Phoenix at his side. All the staff seemed to avoid him like the plague, however. More than likely from the fact that he had just threatened to kill the bartender if he did not serve them drinks. While everyone was slightly scared, nobody dared call the police. This particular restaurant was where most of the crazed whackjobs of the city hung out. "Hey." Naruto turned to see a man with an incredibly flat head. "Can I help you?" he asked, bored out of his wits. "You Fox?" the flat-headed man asked. "Maybe I am. It all depends on who you are," Naruto shot back before continuing his drink. "My boss has taken an interest in you Fox. He wants to have a word with you," the flathead said. "So, it was you who was watching my fight with Spider. Let me guess, your boss is the infamous Tombstone, otherwise known throughout the criminal underworld as the big man, right?" said Naruto, making the flathead nod. "And he has some sort of proposition he wants to discuss with me, I'd wager." "Come on Phoenix, it appears we have a meeting to go to," said Naruto, linking arms with his mate, and they walked out to the limo that was awaiting them, which Phoenix eagerly jumped in, pulling Fox in with her. The door slammed shut and the limo drove away before Hammerhead could get in. Grumbling, he made a call to have another car pick him up. Naruto and Phoenix arrived at a rather large building and exited the limo. Turning to the man who had opened the door for them, Naruto told him that they might want to have it cleaned before it was used again. The man looked inside and could immediately tell what had happened. The telltale signs of sex still lingered in the limo, the driver looking out the windshield, a perverted smile plastered to his face. Naruto and Phoenix were led to the top floor of the building, revealing a rather large elegant office, a large man in a dark suit with gray skin waiting for them. "So, you're the Fox, the thief that has become the thing of legends in the short time you've been around," the man said, indicating for him to sit. "Am I really that popular?" asked Naruto, swiping a cigar from the Tombstone stash before his index finger burst into flames, which he used to light the cigar. The flames diminished and his finger healed perfectly, which Tombstone noticed. "Once the Bugle reported on your exploits in Bayville, you became the talk of the town. And apparently, you also are able to take on Spider-Man and actually win," replied Tombstone. However, I must say I am surprised to find one so young as the Master Thief Fox. Age isn't really an issue when it comes to matters like this. I believe Spider-Man is no older than I am, said Naruto. Now, I believe you have something you wish to discuss with me. Yes. I want to know if you would come and work for me. I would pay you handsomely for your services, said Tombstone. Naruto seemed to ponder it for a moment before shaking his head. Sorry, he said, not interested. I do this more out of sheer boredom than anything else. Not to mention I have my own projects I'm working on right now. Well, at least think about it, replied Tombstone. If you change your mind, you know where to find me. Naruto nodded before grabbing a hold of Phoenix, and the two vanished in a swirl of smoke and leaves. Fox, what did you do? Asked Peter to himself, sitting on his bed, staring at his wrists, new slits in each one, allowing the ability to create his own webs. He fell back on his bed, pondering the events of that night. Fox had said the clones weren't a special power, so what about what he had done to him? He remembered suddenly something Fox had whispered in his ear before throwing him off the building. You've just climbed another step on the evolutionary ladder. You can do what you wish, but if you need any help, there is an institute in Bayville. Walking over to his computer, he did a search and found what he was looking for. The Xavier Institute. Apparently the head of said institute was one of the leading experts on human genetics in the world. He needed to find out more, not only to try and find out anything he could about Fox, but also to satisfy his scientific curiosity. Maybe I'll see if Dr. Connors knows anything about this Xavier guy, thought Peter. I'll check tomorrow. He climbed back into his bed and fell into an uneasy sleep, thinking about his fight with the Master Thief. So, what's our next move? Asked Phoenix, lying in bed next to her lover, her head resting on his chest. Aside from Sandman, this Green Goblin, and the Black Cat, all other major supervillains are currently in prison, replied Naruto. Phoenix just looked at him, a smirk on her face. Jailbreak? She asked. Jailbreak, replied Naruto. And that reminds me. This Black Cat person. Are you gonna take her on as your apprentice like you were thinking? Asked Phoenix. Maybe, but that's not all you're interested in about her, is it? Naruto asked back. You've been trying to get Rogue and Laura in bed with us since the moment they arrived, despite the fact that they only joined 2 days ago, and Rogue can't touch you yet. Heading on top of Naruto, she gave him a lustful look before replying, what can I say? I'm a part of Gene, and I'm curious. I like to experiment. At that, she pulled him in for a deep kiss. Naruto was taking a run around the city, granted he was running on rooftops, jumping over gaps and streets. He thought that he was already in the public's eye, he may as well go around in the day too. When he was fighting Spidey, some Parker guy at the Bugle took pictures of his fight with the webhead. Trouble is, he only sensed one other person, and that was revealed to be Hammerhead. Apparently though, the editor of the Daily Bugle spun the story as if he and Spider were working together. So Naruto was on a mission to meet this J. Jonah Jameson and set him straight, maybe get him to squeal about Peter Parker. Naruto made a rather large leap before landing on the roof of the Daily Bugle main office. Taking out a few low-power exploding notes, he quickly placed them outside Jameson's office. He waited until the room was clear, except for the egotistical bastard, and detonated, knocking Jameson to the other side of his office. Shooting his tails into the room, he grabbed Jameson and brought him outside with him. Needless to say, the man was a little freaked out. Jameson, you little creep, said Naruto, squeezing the man a little harder. I read your paper, and I must say I am shocked at all the lies in it. I have no idea what you're talking about, said Jameson, trying desperately to escape. Don't lie to me, Jameson, replied Naruto. You wrote that Spidey and I were working together. That is a vile and odious lie. However, something in the paper caught my eye. This photographer, Peter Parker, what do you know about him? Parker? He takes pictures of Spider-Man for me. He works freelance, but I don't know much more than that, shouted Jameson. Do you know where to find him? Asked Naruto casually. No, I have no idea. Jameson was suddenly feeling the squeeze increase, threatening to crush bones. Now what did I just say? Don't lie to me, Jameson, I have little patience for those who do, said Naruto, leaving the threat hanging. Alright, said Jameson. He's a student at Midtown Manhattan Magnet High School. You can find him there. Now please let me go, pleaded Jameson. Oh, very poor choice of words, said Naruto, smirking, before releasing Jameson from his grip, letting the man plummet. Jameson screamed as he fell to the ground below. As he neared the ground, he shut his eyes, preparing for impact, before he hit his office floor. He looked around, before running to the gaping hole in his wall, seeing Fox dropping to the ground, before vanishing. Several people quickly dashed into his office, losing their fear now that Fox was gone. Somebody get me Parker, said Jameson. Now. He shouted when nobody moved. School was just getting out, Peter walking to his locker with his friend Harry Osborn. Suddenly though, Peter's cell phone rang, forcing him to cut his conversation short. On the other end of the line, Peter instantly recognized the voice of his employer. "Parker? I suggest you get out of that school now," said Jameson. "What? School's just getting out. You have a job for me or something?" asked Peter. "No, I don't have a job for you. But if you don't leave that school, you'll never work again, at least not in this life," the man shouted. Whoa, what are you talking about?" asked Peter. "The freak fox was here, he was looking for you, and he knows where you go to school," said Jameson, making Peter's eyes widen. "What? How did he find out?" said Peter. "I have no idea," replied Jameson, before Peter heard Jameson mutter obscenities and a rather audible ouch. Alright, he said. "I may have told him. The guy had me dangling out the new window he created in my office. The point is that you need to get out of there, because he could be there at any time." "Wow, Mr. Jameson, I didn't know you cared," said Peter. "Parker, just shut up and get out of the building," shouted Jameson, before Peter's spider sense fired and the door at the end of the hallway blew off its hinges, flying down the hall at high speeds. It was a miracle nobody was severely injured. Peter looked over to the end of the hall to see Fox walk in casually, before chatting up the student. "Hello all," he said. "I don't mean to be rude, but I need to find someone. Is Peter Parker here? You know, takes the pictures of Spider-Man for the Daily Bugle. Anyone know where he is? Anyone? Don't be shy now." Naruto suddenly felt something break over his back. Turning around, he saw a group of what looked to be jocks, all armed with makeshift weapons. The one he had felt was a baseball bat, which was now broken on the floor. Using one of his tails, he slammed all four in the group against a row of lockers, keeping them pinned. "Now then, back to business. Peter Parker. Can Peter come out to play with me?" he shouted in a bored voice. What are you?" Naruto turned to see a red-haired boy backed up against the lockers, next to a brown-haired boy. There was something about the brown-haired, but Naruto couldn't place it. Reaching with another of his tails, he wrapped it around the redhead's throat. Not enough to choke him, but tight enough to hoist him in the air without dropping him. "I'm the one who may turn murderer if Peter Parker doesn't show himself," replied Naruto. "And who might you be?" The boy grabbed his tail and tried to pry it off. Surprisingly, he actually got close to freeing himself. The kid was strong for lacking visible muscles. Harry Osborn," replied the boy, and Naruto seemed to brighten. Well, you're Norman Osborn's kid. When you get home later, tell your father he may want to tighten security around the research and development department." "I like a challenge," said Naruto, releasing him from his grip. He then turned back to the boy with brown hair. "You know, there is something about you that strikes me as very familiar. Have I threatened you before?" he asked, getting a head shake in the negative. "I ever steal from you?" he asked, once more getting a negative head shake in response. "You're Peter Parker, aren't you?" This time Naruto got no response, indicating he had more or less just hit the nail on the head. "Yes," he said, grabbing Peter, "we have a winner." In the time it took most people to blink, both had vanished. Both Naruto and Peter appeared on top of one of the many skyscrapers that filled New York. While Peter appeared frightened beyond belief, Naruto could tell he was acting. Reading people was what he did, he could tell if a person was sincere or not. "You can cut the crap, kid, I know you're not scared of me," said Naruto. "What are you talking about?" asked Peter, and Naruto finally realized why he was so familiar. It was the voice that gave it away. Well, so the spectacular Spider-Man and his paparazzi are one and the same. I must say, I'm impressed that nobody has figured it out yet. "So you like your new web shooters?" asked Naruto. Peter sighed, he knew his cover was blown. "What are you going to do to me? For that matter, what have you done to me?" he asked. "Simple," replied Naruto. "Whatever mutation you possess has merely been increased. Hence your new organic web shooters. I'm more interested in how you managed to snap those pictures while fighting me. What do you do, set these things up beforehand? Are you psychic or something?" "Why so glum, chum?" asked Naruto after seeing Peter freaking out about him knowing his identity. "What, you think I'm gonna shout it to the heavens? Go after your friends and family? No. Listen, I'm not even in the city for you, I'm here for 2 reasons. And I'm guessing one of them is in the Oscorp R&D department," said Peter. "Oh, very good, Spider, very good," replied Naruto. "You never did answer my question on how you liked your wrist webs. You know, they actually work great. But I can't help but feel like there's something off with me now," replied Peter. "Well, that's to be expected," said Naruto. "Why do you play the thief?" asked Peter, catching Naruto off guard. "Why? Why not?" shot back Naruto. "You have a power that could be used to help people, yet you use it for fun and for thievery. I want to know why," replied Peter. "Look, kid. You and I are not so different. There is, however, one major difference between us," replied Naruto. "And what's that?" asked Peter. "After so long playing the hero," sighed Naruto, "I came to my senses. Maybe you should too." No matter what you do, in spite of everything you've done for people, eventually, it always ends the same, they dislike you, and you get no gratification. So what's the other reason? Asked Peter. What? Asked Naruto. You said you were here for 2 reasons. What's the other? He asked. Oh, now you see that one's a secret. You'll find out eventually, said Naruto, going to the edge of the building. When he was about to hop off, he stopped. So, did you ever check out the Xavier Institute? He asked. I looked into it, but it doesn't seem so special. I was going to ask one of the ESU professors if they knew anything about it, replied Peter. Good. Well, I'm not too popular there, I can put in a good word for you if you want to check it out, said Naruto, hopping off the building. Peter watched as Naruto waved before disappearing in the way that he does. Peter merely sighed before shooting a web line and swinging back to school before getting home. It was probably all over the gossip grapevine that he had been taken, which means that parents probably knew, which means that if she hadn't heard, his Aunt May would be terrified at his being kidnapped. Oh man, things just keep getting better and better, he said to himself. Phoenix looked up from her magazine to see Naruto enter the hotel room, carrying a bag of some sort. He walked into the bathroom and she could hear the water running. Hey Naruto, you okay? She called, only for him to come out of the bathroom, once more carrying the bag. Yeah, I'm fine, said Naruto casually, slinging the bag over his shoulder. Well, you should have been back here about an hour ago. What took you so long? You have any trouble finding Parker? She asked. Nope, and babe, you are not gonna believe what I have to tell you. Parker doesn't just take pictures of Spidey, he is Spidey, said Naruto. Oh, that is too good, said Phoenix. But I'm gonna guess that's not the reason you're late. Correct. I was actually relaxing when some freak named Miss Marrow tried to get me to free something called Apocalypse, said Naruto. And? Asked Phoenix, looking for more. This is his head, said Naruto, pulling the severed head of the man out of his bag. You mind? He asked, getting a nod from Phoenix before the head was destroyed, dissolving into millions of pieces before evaporating into the air. So, your first kill, my little mate, is growing up, said Phoenix, getting a chuckle. Yeah, well, you have to start somewhere that isn't yourself, replied Naruto. Plus, if you're going to hunt down the Hydra members, it would be beneficial if you knew how to kill them. You know though, I never saw you as a decapitation kind of guy, said Phoenix, lying down on their hotel bed. Oh really? What kind of killer did you see me as? Asked Naruto. I don't know. You always struck me as someone who would prefer impaling people on large, sharp objects, she replied. Well, that's oddly specific, said Naruto, hopping into bed with her. Yeah, well, you'd be surprised, she said, rolling on top of him, locking lips. Really? Well, surprise me, said Naruto as she once more challenged him to a battle of the tongues. Aunt May, I'm fine, and it's good money. Said Peter. Once his aunt had heard about his day, she spent the rest of hers attempting to get him to stop taking photos for the Bugle. I don't care if the money is that good. It's you that I'm worried about, Peter, she said. Now, it's your choice, but I at least want you to think about it, said May. Okay, I'll think about it, sighed Peter. He knew that May Parker was not about to give up so easily, but at least this would be a nice reprieve. Thank you. Now, would you like something to eat? She asked, walking toward the kitchen. No thanks, Aunt May, I'm not really hungry, said Peter, heading up to his room. Well, alright. I'm going out tonight with Anna Watson. If you get hungry at all, there are leftovers in the fridge, said May, before getting her coat, heading toward the door. Alright, Aunt May, I'll see you later. Called Peter, already in his room, throwing on his costume. Okay, goodbye, Peter, he heard before the door closed. Pulling his mask on, he got to his window, and when the coast was clear he launched into the night. He wasn't expecting anything to happen, as things had been extremely quiet lately. He hadn't even heard anything from the Green Goblin in a few weeks. But he really needed to clear his head, get his mind around everything that had happened since the night before. He had indeed asked Dr. Connors about Charles Xavier. Apparently the man was one of the greatest experts on genetics and human mutation in the world. So why would a man like that set up an institute for the gifted, unless of course gifted meant something more than intelligent? That had to be it. Whatever Xavier was doing, he was doing it in secret and his students were like himself. He had to see if he could get in touch with the man. And Fox seemed to know a lot about the place. Was he a student there at some point? It was all so confusing. As he swung, he heard an alarm go off further away. Looking around, he found it was some normal everyday bank robbers. Easy enough. Throughout the night, that was about all he got was just normal criminals. With all the super criminals running around those days, Peter was a little relieved. Until of course his spider sense flared and he quickly moved just in time to avoid a pumpkin bomb, courtesy of the Green Goblin. Well darn. I missed, said Goblin in an almost playful tone. You know, I'm really not in the mood, Gabi. Why don't you find a Halloween festival or something, said Peter, slightly irritated that his for the most part peaceful night was now ruined. Well, I would love to be the newspaper to your bug tonight, Spidey. I have other business, replied Gabi. Word through the grapevine is that Fox is robbing Oscorp. This, I've got to see. With that, he laughed as he soared through the sky on his glider, heading for the Oscorp R&D building. Peter suddenly remembered what Fox had told Harry about and quickly spun a web to try and stop Fox. Whatever he wanted in there, it meant trouble for everyone else. Sir. The older man turned at being addressed, finding one of his subordinates standing at his door. What is it? He asked, grinning slightly at what he knew was coming. We've just received confirmation that the Oscorp alarms were tripped. Fox is there. If we want to get him, all you need to do is give the order, General, replied the younger woman with a salute. General Thaddeus Thunderbird Raw smirked broadly under his white mustache. Do it, he said. I'm coming with to oversee this operation personally. Yes, sir, replied the woman, rushing off, the general not far behind. Exiting the building, he found 3 helicopters waiting to take him inside the city of New York. This was possibly his one and only chance. Given warning by Norman Osborn himself, this was the first and only time Fox would ever be found predictably. As soon as he was on board, the order was given, sending the choppers off straight into the heart of New York City, where their target was currently. Naruto was beginning to have some fun. The security at Oscorp was incredibly high and he had been as careful as he could, trying to humiliate Osborn by getting in and out without setting off a single alarm. However, once again, he found his tails to be much more of a hindrance than an asset as they managed to set off one before jerking and smashing a fire alarm, setting that off as well. Deciding to hell with subtlety, Naruto just shrugged before taking off as fast as he could towards his intended item to steal. As he was rushing along, a strange sound was heard behind him. Turning around, he was just in time to dodge a spinning item strangely similar to a shuriken with a strange face designed on it. Seeing it coming, he dipped backward, making the strange shuriken-like device fly over an inch from his mask's face plate. Standing up, an eerie cackling was heard. Well, what do we have here? Looking up, Naruto saw the strangest looking thing he had ever seen. Granted, it was more than likely a costume, but it made Nightcrawler look normal. And just who are you? Asked Naruto. The Emerald Elf. You know, I called him the same thing the first time I saw him, said Spider-Man, dropping from the ceiling. Looking between the two, Naruto sighed. Look, I just want what I came here to steal, so if you don't mind, he said, walking away. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just the guy that nearly took your head off. Really, you could at least show some sort of reaction, replied the goblin, jumping from the railing he was on, landing on his glider which flew in under him. Yes, well, forgive me, said Naruto, turning back. But I have a date later, so I'm trying to make this quick and clean, and I really don't want either of you on my conscience. Ooh, said Goblin. The boy's a bit beepy. Maybe I should knock him down a few pegs. In a flash, a bomb was ejected from a storage port on his glider, sending it up to your hand. Catch. He shouted. Thinking he was indeed better than either of these two, Naruto didn't even attempt to dodge. In his defense, he wasn't used to the goblin's weaponry. When the bomb exploded, Naruto was blasted by it, making him fly into the wall, face first. Heading back up, he glared at the other two that interrupted his evening. He had to keep a straight face, however, when Spider-Man pointed at the goblin in a manner that screamed he did it. Okay, conscience be damned, I'm going to teach you some manners, said Naruto. All he got in response was a smirk from the goblin. Naruto growled, lunging at Gabi. He was too fast, however, using his glider to his advantage. He easily evaded Naruto, who couldn't change his course in midair. But he did, however, have control of his tails. He whipped his tails back and managed to strike the glider on the wing, causing it to lose control. Leaping off, the goblin was just in time to avoid smashing into the wall. While in the air, he quickly pointed his hands at Naruto before his fingers glowed and Naruto was blasted with a bolt of electricity. Rubbing his chest, Naruto was vaguely reminded of Fighting Storm. He didn't have long to bask in the memories, however, as he had to avoid several more of the shuriken-like projectiles. For the first time in a very long time, Naruto was on the defensive in a fight. Naruto didn't even take a defensive approach against Wolverine. But Wolverine was slow in comparison to the goblin, who was much faster, much stronger, and thought on his feet much easier than Wolverine. Well, this is exciting. I only hope I get a few more minutes of it, said Goblin, forcing a raised eyebrow beneath Naruto's mask. What are you talking about? He asked, settling into his fighting stance. Well, let's just say I know something you don't know, replied the goblin, before pulling out a pumpkin bomb in each hand and hurling them both at the super thief. Outside the building, Phoenix waited for her mate to finish. She was a little concerned with the fact that two other presences had entered the building and Naruto was now fighting one, but was a little preoccupied with the fact that she felt as though she were being watched. She trusted her feelings, but in New York, even with the location and lateness of hour, too many minds were active to be able to discern any relevant thought from who may be watching them. Suddenly, her ears were hit with an explosion coming from inside the building. Deciding to go in and investigate, she felt something sharp enter her neck. Reaching over and pulling whatever it was out, she barely got a look at the dart before her vision began to swim. Her breathing became slow, and her legs wobbled before she fell over on the roof, her vision blurring in and out as several people in military garb raced in, a helicopter following overhead. She felt some sort of device slip over her head before she was picked up by one of the military personnel and rushed to another helicopter which had just landed on the roof. Back inside, the three heard the choppers coming. The goblin made a largely overacted move of pretending to hear them, even lifting his hand to his ear. Turning back to Fox with a cackle, he bowed before pressing something on his gauntlet. His disused glider sprang back to life, which he jumped on and blasted out the window. Phoenix? What is happening out there, thought Naruto. No answer. Phoenix. Naruto practically shouted in his mind before the hallway was filled with military. Rushing past Spider-Man, they shot round after round of tranquilizer darts at Naruto, who used every ounce of agility he had to evade. Once they stopped firing, Naruto turned to run, but felt a sting right below his shoulder blade. Reaching with his tails, he ripped it out quickly before turning back to the armed forces. Because of his unique situation, Naruto wasn't to be taken down by one dart of the tranquilizer, but the effects were still hitting him. His vision began blurring slightly and his movements began to slow, allowing him to be hit by two more tranquilizer darts, forcing him to his knees. Quickly, a strange ring-like device was brought out and slipped over his head. Naruto could feel electricity sparking from it. Some sort of device to make sure its wearer wouldn't be able to even focus enough to remove it. What is going on here? Asked Spider-Man. Military business. We're taking Fox into custody, said the woman who appeared to be in charge. You can go, Spider-Man, things are over here. Spider-Man gazed around as Naruto was restrained by the small army of military personnel. They used some special type of handcuffs and restraining cuffs for his ankles. He was also tied up and the larger men of the group grabbed his arms and legs before rushing him outside the building. Following, Spider-Man watched as Naruto was loaded onto one of the helicopters before the entire group distributed between them and took off. Deciding there was little he could do, Spider-Man just sighed, exasperated, before shooting a web line to head home. Naruto woke up some time later to find himself in a room of bright lights and mirrors, more than likely meant to disorient him further. He at least saw in the mirror that they at least had the decency to keep his mask on. Looking to his left, he found Phoenix, also wearing one of the devices. When he tried to send a thought through to her, however, he received a severe electric shock, causing him to lose focus. Every few seconds, Phoenix experienced the same thing, obviously trying to gather any coherent thought. Suddenly, the door opened and in stepped the woman Naruto remembered seeing at Oscorp, along with an older man with white hair and a mustache to match. Also walking in were two medics, each with a syringe in hand. Inserting the needles into the necks of Phoenix and Naruto, they injected them with a muscle paralyzer, preventing them from doing much of anything. Take his band off. I need him able to think clearly, said the man with white hair. Yes sir, said one of the medics, complying. What about her? She asked. Her stays on. We don't need a fully lucid telepath going apeshit on us during this meeting, replied the white-haired man, obviously the one in charge. Naruto turned his full focus to him once he could think clearly enough to realize the fact. Who the hell are you? Asked Naruto. The white-haired man merely looked at him. It made Naruto nearly cringe. It said, listen and listen well, because I can do what I want with you. My name is Thaddeus Ross. General Thaddeus Ross, he said. And I have brought you here to ask for your help. That sent Naruto reeling. So the look was more of an I can't believe I'm doing this look rather than his original thought. Okay then, 3 questions. A. What do you need? 2. What's in it for us? And D. Why the hell did you take us hostage if all you were going to do is see if we'd help with your little job? That lightened the mood slightly. Ross chuckled. In order, he said, we need your help in bringing in a very dangerous fugitive. We just managed to track him down and if we want to catch him, we need to move soon. Second, if you help us, you will be compensated with an amount of $350,000, your criminal records will be wiped out, and you'll get the fight of your life if things go haywire. That said, Naruto was listening even more intently than before. And finally, we had to get you to listen to us, and this was the only way we could guarantee you would hear us out. The answers are acceptably, however, I'm more interested in the fight. What are we talking? Asked Naruto. Follow me, said Ross, before the medics came to unlock Naruto. "Oh, no need," said Naruto, flexing what should have been a frozen arm, shattering his restraints, much to the surprise of General Ross. "You pumped me full of tranquilizers, but this time, I was lucid enough to resist paralysis. Now, if you don't mind, please let my girlfriend go." "She won't try anything?" asked Ross. "I swear," said Naruto. Ross nodded to Naruto, who tore the band off the still paralyzed girl's head and, supporting her on his shoulder, began following Ross into a new room. When they got there, he sat, indicating them to do the same as a screen rolled down from the ceiling before the lights went black and a projector switched on, showing two scientists hard at work. "This," began Ross, "is Drive. Bruce Banner. He is your target." Naruto looked at Ross strangely at being assigned such a scrawny geek for his target. "What is this?" he complained. "What's the challenge a stickman is going to give me?" "That stickman, as far as I see it, is the most powerful human weapon in the world, and his whole body is property of the US Army," said Ross, holding up a remote, flipping to another piece of video. This time, Dr. Banner seemed to be in pain and was growing larger and larger. Naruto watched in awe as his skin tone changed, and he continued to grow until most of his clothing ripped off. The final product looked to be some 9 feet tall, with the physique of a linebacker and the skin color of broccoli. It looked at the camera before letting out an inhuman roar before smashing said camera to bits. Banner had no idea what he was working on. "We did. We had him trying to create the next step in bioengineered human weapons. Super soldiers. He tested it on himself and something went very wrong," said Ross. "Or very right. Your task will be to incapacitate only. We want him in our custody, not dead. I do warn you, however, his power is triggered emotionally. If his heart rate gets too high, he shifts from the stick man to that. After that, the more riled up he gets, the stronger he becomes." "Well, in that case," said Naruto, "I want to trade in the cash prize. You get me $100,000 and what I was trying to get from the Oscorp R&D lab, I get you your human weapon. Sound fair?" "Done," said Ross with not even a second thought. "We have his general location, but he could move fast. How soon can you be ready to move?" "Let me to Bayville. I have some people that would be very helpful to me there. I'll need to pick them up," said Naruto. "After that, we hunt." "Excellent," said Ross, standing, as did the others, Phoenix finally getting feeling back in her body. "I'll have a helicopter prepared by the time you get outside." Holding out his hand, Naruto merely gazed at it before, still supporting Phoenix, walked out of the room. "We've got you this time, you bastard," whispered Ross, before making the call to the choppers. Back in Bayville, Laura and Rogue just exited Naruto's compound, ready for school. Rogue was a bit off ever since her run-in with the X-Men the first day her strength went up and she crushed Scott's hand. Laura, while not very social, seemed to at least enjoy the feeling of being outside with other people, rather than Hydra's tool. "What is that noise?" asked Rogue, her newly sensitive hearing picking up a strange buzzing sound. "Helicopter," said Laura, not even looking at Rogue. She whipped around, having been preparing for Hydra to track her down since arriving nearly a week ago. And her ears were trained to pick out the different sounds of aircraft. Sure enough, a helicopter began getting closer and closer. Rogue adopted a very basic stance in case there was a fight, while Laura extended her claws. The helicopter landed, and Rogue felt a familiar presence before placing a gloved hand on the clone girl's shoulder, letting her know that it was okay. Once the helicopter landed, the two saw Naruto and Phoenix jump out before running over to them. "School day is over, ladies," he said. "Get back inside and get your good clothes on. We've just been recruited by the military. We're going Hulk hunting." "Hulk hunting?" asked Rogue. "What's that supposed to mean?" "He means we're being sent to take out Dr. Bruce Banner, codenamed Hulk." The three stared at her like she was crazy before she was slightly creeped out by it. "How the hell do you know that?" asked Naruto. "At Hydra they have files on any being that can be considered a threat. Hulk is one of them. They've had me run training simulations with a Hulk stand-in, but I've never fought the real one," replied the girl. "Well then, in that case, if something happens to me, you're in charge. This isn't some petty theft, ladies, this is retrieval. We need him alive," said Naruto, heading into his compound, the girls following. Within 10 minutes they were out. Naruto had merely changed into civilian clothes but kept his mask, while Laura put on her suit she had worn on her first night and Rogue placed on her X-Men outfit. Phoenix, going a bit more elegant, wore a black dress that matched her red one, with flames at the edges. Boarding the helicopter, they took off, heading towards a prepared airport where a plane would take them to whatever location they had found their target. As Naruto prepared to fall asleep, he felt the slightest twinge of something in the back of his mind, but shrugged it off when he didn't feel it again after a moment. "Naruto?" Naruto's eyes shot open at the voice in his head. He looked around, but saw nothing but the hotel room they had checked into upon arriving in the small town in Montana. Naruto couldn't remember the name, but knew it was close to the Canadian border. He looked down at the sleeping form of Phoenix. If she had felt the presence in his head, it didn't register even the slightest twitch on her peaceful face. Throwing on some clothes, Naruto left the hotel room, traveling to the roof of the building. Alright, he thought. How the hell did you get the number of my head, Xavier? So I was right then, resonated the voice of Professor X in his mind as Naruto sat down and entered a meditative position. You really are Fox. Some psychic you are if it took you this long to figure it out, replied Naruto. You never answered my question. How are you getting around my mental barriers? You've been in my mind twice, Naruto said Xavier. In order to do that, you had to penetrate my own barriers and in doing so fractured your own. We share a slight telepathic connection because of the mental contact. I'm merely using Cerebro to enhance the connection. Oh joy, thought back Naruto. So let me guess, you've already told everyone in the mansion of what you've learned about my identity. No. Only Aurora and Logan. While they may not seem it, your death has deeply disturbed my students, and revealing your identity to them could potentially be catastrophic. I don't mean to take up much of your time now, but I think I at least deserve to have some answers, replied Xavier. And what makes you think that? Asked Naruto. Because rumors have spread through the mansion that you can teach Rogue to control her powers. If my intuition is correct, Scott will attempt to track you down as well. I don't wish to force my students to either do or not do anything, but I am concerned for their safety, replied Xavier. Your concern is touching. Yes, I can teach Rogue to control her powers. However, if Cyclops wishes to learn to control his, he'll have to get that information from me, but not without a price. Make sure he's aware of that, replied Naruto. Of course, replied Xavier. But what is it you plan to do? I know you have some sort of plan, as I have caught glimpses of it from your mind, but only in name Exodus. What is it? Now that is information you are not deserving of yet. But I will tell you this. The way things work around here, they're gonna change. With that, Naruto tuned out Xavier. Getting up, he was about to go back inside. However, when he turned, Laura was standing in the doorway. Hey, you should go back to bed. We're all going to need our rest for tomorrow, he told her, walking up and resting a hand on her shoulder. I know, replied the clone girl. But there's something I need to do, if it's alright. Do whatever you gotta do, Laura said Naruto. No sooner had the words left his lips when Laura threw her arms around his neck, pulling him in for an extremely forceful, but not at all unpleasant, kiss. It lasted for nearly a minute before Laura pulled away, leaving a slightly dazed Naruto. Blushing, the girl uttered a quiet goodnight before dashing back inside. Is that how all my first kisses with girls are destined to go? Thought Naruto, shaking his head before he too re-entered the building. Entering his hotel room, Naruto once more took his place next to Phoenix, who curled up next to him in her sleep. Back in Bayville, Xavier pulled off the cerebral interface helmet used to operate Cerebro with a sigh. Turning, he exited the room, only to run into both the other adults of the institute. So how about it, Chuck? Asked Logan. Is it the kid? Yes, Logan, it was, replied Xavier with a sigh, lacing his fingers in front of his face. It seems that, if your trip to the mall was any indication, then Naruto is also adept at shape-shifting. Possibly as much so as Mystique. But if this were true, why would he even bother going to school, regardless of how short-lived it was? Asked Aurora. My guess would be to gather information. I don't believe he's out to destroy anything, although his last message to me was a bit ominous, said Xavier. What did he say? Growled out Logan. He said that the ways things work in the world are going to change, replied Xavier. I don't know what it means, but it obviously has something to do with his Exodus project. How is Scott? He seems desperately conflicted, replied Aurora. I honestly don't know whether he will stay here or join Fox. What's his game, anyway? Asked Logan. I mean, he gets a hold of an evil gene, a clone of me, and Rogue. It's like he's building his own version of the X-Men or the Brotherhood. Perhaps he is, Logan said Xavier. However, his offer to help Laura and Rogue seems more out of generosity than a quest to prove mutant superiority. I think he may try to train his own group of mutants, but to train them to use their powers without fear of human reaction. However, it's only speculation. It makes sense though, Professor, said Aurora. He seems to merely be looking for a fight. But why? I believe that maybe, just maybe, he's out to prove something. Yes, Aurora, I see your point. But what point could he be trying to make? Said Xavier. Seems to me he just wants to prove superiority. You've heard him say that I'm his only challenge, said Logan. Perhaps. But I can't shake the feeling that perhaps we're missing something. This goes much deeper than vanity, I know it, said Xavier. He was about to say more, but the intercom suddenly blared, Jean at the other end. Professor? Are you down there? She asked. Pressing the button on the wall next to him, Xavier waited just a moment before answering. Yes, Jean, what is it? He asked. Professor, you have a call from one Dr. Kurt Connors, she said, causing the man to raise an eyebrow. Connors? I haven't heard from him in years. Give me a moment, I'll take the call. Wheeling into another room, Xavier picked up the phone, finding the line Connors was waiting on. "Kurt, is it really you?" asked Xavier. "It's been a while. I think the last time we saw each other was when you opened your institute," came the reply from the other end. "Yes, it's been years, my old friend. Was this a social call, or do you have something to ask me?" asked Xavier in a cheerful tone, and he could hear the embarrassment in his old colleague's voice. "You always know, don't you? As a matter of fact, I'm gonna call up an old favor you owe me," replied Connors. Alright, said Xavier, chuckling a bit. "What kind of favor?" "One of the students working in my lab has been incredibly interested in the fields of genetics and has recently taken an interest in your work, in particular these past few days. I was thinking that maybe you could humor him with an interview of sorts. He's more than willing to come to you if that's an issue," said Connors. "No, not at all. In fact, that's perfect. I'd be happy to see him anytime he's willing," said Xavier. "Thanks, Charles, this really means a lot to him. He's a genius when it comes to science and genetics. Reminds me of you back in the good old days. His name is Peter Parker. Depending on when he leaves, he'll be there sometime tomorrow," said Connors. "Not a problem, my old friend. Say hello to Martha for me," replied Xavier. "I will," said Connors. Then the phones were hung up. "Chuck, are you sure that it's a good time to be giving a kid an interview with all the shit that's been happening lately?" asked Logan. "Ordinarily yes, but Kurt is an old friend and I do as a matter of fact owe him a favor. And I really will not say no to a boy who is so willing to learn," said Charles. "I don't know," said Logan. "Sounds like something's up if you ask me." "Logan, are you ever at ease?" asked Aurora. "No," was his reply before he headed straight for the danger room. Xavier and Aurora merely shared a slight glance before silently making their way to the upper portion of the mansion. "Target in sight," said Naruto through his comm link. "This guy better be strong." "Oh, he is," replied Ross. "However, we do not want him transforming. You're just a last resort. We cannot lose him again." "Understood," came the voice of Laura over her own comm link. "What's the plan, Fox?" asked Rogue. Naruto turned to his team. "Alright, here's the deal. In the event that the target changes, Laura and I will confront him. We can take the beating better than either of you. Phoenix, you'll give us long-range support and cover with your power. If all else fails, Rogue will be our last resort and will drain him." Once he got nods, he quickly turned off his comm link, signaling the others to do the same. "Alright," he continued. "And now we discuss the real plan. It's quite simple, much like what I told you with the old shitbag listening in, with only one major difference." He leaned in and smirked a twisted smirk. "I want my fight, so we're going to force Dr. Banner to change." "Do you think that's a good idea?" asked Rogue. "We've got our money, we have our prize waiting for us. All it takes is an incredibly irritating shadow clone, disguised as a civilian, and he'll transform. Even if we lose, as long as we survive we get our stuff," said Naruto. "And if I'm good at anything, it's surviving things. Not that I intend to lose, mind you, but there's always the possibility." Looking out the window of the sedan, Naruto silently counted down, watching the slightly jumpy man keep looking over his shoulder. "And here we go," he said, as his shadow clone knocked into the man, causing both the good doctor and his clone to fall to the ground. Naruto's disguised clone quickly got up and began shouting things at Dr. Banner. It looked as though the man was trying to apologize, but the clone would have no part in it. "Oh shit," Naruto heard over his comm link, which he had switched back on. "Move in," said Ross. "Get that bastard out of there, we can't afford to get Banner worked up." "Too late," said Naruto as his clone kicked the downed man in the ribs. As he tried to do it again, Banner caught the leg, throwing the clone into a wall, causing it to collapse on it. Naruto shuddered at the clone's final memory. "Damn it, all of you retreat," shouted Ross. "Fox, you and your team are up." "Yes sir," said Naruto. He and the team exited the car just as Banner stood up. He was now beginning to turn a greenish color and stood 6 feet and was still growing. Removing his comm link, Naruto tossed it on the ground. "Hello you," he said, causing the finished transforming being to glare angrily at him. "Laura, you stay back unless I call for your help. I can take this guy." Apparently, even with his anger clouding his judgment, Hulk apparently understood, because he growled. Naruto jumped at the beast, he was caught in mid-air by his giant hands and slammed into the ground hard. Gripping the monstrosity's wrist, he whipped the green brute over his head and smashed him into the ground. Hulk however quickly turned and whipped Naruto into and through the side of a building. "What are you doing? Get in there," said Phoenix in Laura's mind. "He told me to hang back until he asked for help," replied the girl. "Does it really look like he's going to ask for help?" said Phoenix. Looking back at the fight, Naruto had jumped onto Hulk's back and wrapped his legs around his neck while wrapping his tails around the monster's arms. He sat there, punching the side of Hulk's head, but the green beast merely shook it off and reached over. Grabbing Naruto in the back, he flipped him over, ripping his tails free from his arms as he was smashed into the ground. Naruto shook off the stars he was seeing in time to hear an inhuman roar from Hulk as he raised his foot to stomp on his face. "Whoa!" shouted Naruto, rolling out of the way. Raising his other foot, Hulk tried to step on him again, but Naruto once more rolled away before shooting his clawed hand out and tearing at the Hulk's green skin, which was harder to pierce than he thought possible. The Hulk roared in rage before kicking Naruto across the street into another building. Not with the force to put him through the wall, but several spiderweb cracks formed where he impacted. He dropped to the ground and looked up in time to see a car flying at him. He leapt to his feet, jumping up and running on top of the thrown vehicle as it slammed through the wall where he had just been. Naruto could hear the sounds of people screaming, but tuned them out. He was having fun. He dashed in at Hulk, who threw a wide swinging punch at the shinobi. Naruto ducked underneath it and leapt up, delivering an uppercut to Hulk's face, but the brutish monster wasn't even fazed. Hulk threw a kick which connected to Naruto's jaw, launching him into the air. The ninja prepared to right himself, but was jerked back to earth by Hulk, who had yanked on one of his tails, sending him straight back to the monster man. Spinning, Hulk slammed Naruto into a car, scaring the crap out of the people inside it, and they quickly shifted to reverse before driving off. Feeling another pull on his tails, Naruto was jerked back to the ground in front of Hulk. Interlacing his fingers, Hulk swung his hands down on Naruto, who put up his arms to block. "Okay, Laura," said Naruto, before being hammered farther into the ground. He could feel his bones shatter and heal. "I could use another crushing blow." Shut him up for a moment. This time, some bone had ripped through his muscles and skin before retracting and healing flawlessly. A little help. He finished as another blow smashed him deeper into the expanding crater. As Hulk prepared to smash Naruto again, he heard a shout and felt several sharp objects pierce his back. He roared in rage and began to thrash, but couldn't shake the girl off, nor could he reach her. Seeing a building, he ran at it before jumping and turning in midair, smashing Laura between himself and the wall. When she didn't let go, he leapt into the air before turning his body parallel to the ground, slamming down on her as they landed. He felt whatever was stabbing into him exit his body. Standing up, he saw the girl. The force of him landing on her while in her position had almost knocked her unconscious. She had a large gash on her forehead, but it healed quickly. Rolling over, she began crawling away, trying to stand. Picking her up by her neck, Hulk lifted her up to see her face to face. Growling at her, he casually threw her to the ground. He prepared to step on her, but when he brought his foot down, it was blocked by some invisible force. Finished healing, Laura shook off a shock to see Phoenix had formed a protective dome over her. "That's enough," she said, lifting Hulk into the air. He roared at her and began to thrash with rage, but was going nowhere. "Rogue, get in there." Rogue nodded, but Naruto appeared in her path. "No," he said. "We had enough trouble when you absorbed my power. The last thing we need is you turning into that," he continued. "Until you learn better control of your abilities, you stay back." Rogue seemed like she was insulted for a moment, but quickly realized that he was right. She backed away slowly, causing Hulk to stare for a moment, but his gaze was more focused on Naruto. The ninja walked up to the now immobile Hulk, pulling out an exploding tag. Running up now, Naruto was able to dodge a sloppy punch from the Hulk, leaping on top of the monster's arm, running up it and sticking the exploding tag to his chest. Kicking the green beast in the face, Naruto leapt off and back-flipped away, detonating the exploding tag. While it did seem to affect Hulk more than their other attacks, it had the unfortunate side effect of knocking him out of Phoenix's mental grasp. It also only increased Hulk's rage. With a roar, Hulk ran at Naruto, preparing to dodge. Naruto was wholly unprepared for the beast to clap. The force of the clap caused a great wind that blew Naruto back into the building wall behind him. This disoriented the shinobi long enough for Hulk to deliver a punishing blow to Naruto, slamming him through the wall and out the other side of the building. He was flung into a car driving by, and he could hear the screams of those inside as they looked at Naruto and at the hole he had just made in the side of the building. When they did, they screamed, seeing the Hulk emerging from the hole in the wall. They all quickly exited the car and ran. Hulk looked down to his side at a parked car before picking it up. He appeared ready to throw the car at Naruto, but the blonde countered by lifting the car he had slammed into via his tails. Making use of them, he threw the car straight at Hulk, but the green monstrosity used his own car as a baseball bat and knocked the other car away, sending it crashing through the wall of another building. Running to Naruto, Hulk hefted the car over his head and brought it down on Naruto, who quickly scrambled out of the way. However, he cried out in pain when one of his tails was caught by the car, crushing it and slicing into it with shreds of metal. Forcing himself to get through the pain, he used his strength to yank his tail out, to find it a bloody, shredded mess. It quickly healed, but the blood stayed on the fur of his tail. "Punk, this is starting to get interesting," said Naruto. The Hulk roared as he dashed at Naruto, leaping through the air. Jumping, Naruto did a handspring off the green beast's back, attaching another exploding tag as he did so. Using his immense strength, he flipped up and stuck to the side of a building, while Hulk tore a hole through one of the structures on the other side of the street. Making a seal with his hands, Naruto detonated the tag, and Hulk was blown out of the building, coming out the very hole he had gone in from. Standing up, Hulk growled and prepared to leap up to Naruto. However, he was soon hit from behind, slammed into the street by a car. Looking to his side, he saw Phoenix hoisting another vehicle before throwing that at him as well. Rearing back, Hulk backhanded the car, sending it flying off. Roaring in rage, he began running toward Phoenix, who sent more and more projectiles at the monstrosity. However, he just kept batting them aside. Using her power, she began forcing him back, but not by much. His strength was too massive for even her power, though the trained eye could see flakes of Hulk skin actually peeling off and dissolving. Getting closer to Phoenix, inch by inch, he brought back his fist and thrust it forward. Forming a shield around herself, Phoenix blocked the majority of the force of Hulk's attack, but it still was strong enough to punch past her defense, and he grabbed her in his massive hand, gripping her neck and hoisting her into the air. Naruto quickly prepared to leap into action, but Hulk released Phoenix suddenly. Glancing at his mate, Naruto could tell it wasn't her, nor had Laura or Rogue done anything. And if he wasn't mistaken, Hulk's expression softened slightly. Before taking on this job, Naruto had made sure to read Hulk's file very thoroughly. When Banner made the change, it wasn't some monster taking over. The Hulk was merely a physical manifestation of his own rage. Beneath the cloud of anger and savagery and possibly even bitter hate that affected him, Banner was still a reasonable human being. He seemed to respond through his Hulk persona to certain people that he recognized. Coupled with his anger overpowering his better judgment, his insane strength, and his raw power, Hulk also had a set of keenly heightened senses, to a point where they made his own and Wolverine's pale in comparison. Naruto didn't know what it was, but Hulk had apparently sensed something about his lover, something that he himself had apparently not sensed. As he had not jumped in yet, Laura had decided to take another shot. Dashing up to the not-so-jolly green giant, she leaped into the and, using the adamantium on her bones, swung her arms down on Hulk's head, using the force combined with the hard metal to try to disorient the monster. It didn't work. Leaping backwards into a back handspring, the girl narrowly avoided the giant fist coming down on her before she jumped back and brought out her claws in her arms, piercing Hulk's left arm with one side while slashing away with her other pair of claws in her other arm. Roaring in protest, Hulk whipped his arm back. With only the pair of claws to hold her, Laura was sent flying back after they slid cleanly out of Hulk's arm. Bracing herself for the impact of the building she was thrown at, she closed her eyes but felt herself stop short, something wrapped around her waist. When she opened her eyes, she stared straight into the mask of Naruto, who had caught her with one of his tails. "You okay?" asked Naruto, lowering the girl to the ground as he walked down the side of the building. "I'm fine, but this isn't going to work," said Laura. "He just gets stronger the angrier he gets, and we're not exactly letting him calm down." "Very true. And speaking of, remind me to talk to Phoenix later," said Naruto. "I'm curious to know why Hulk didn't try to pummel her. Not that him holding back wasn't a bad thing, but it piques my curiosity." "We need to weaken him somehow if we're going to beat him," said Laura, nodding to his mention of Hulk not trying to harm the red-haired telekinetic. "Right. Change of plan," said Naruto, using Shunshin to disappear before reappearing with the last member of their team. "Change of plans," he said again, before he did the same with Phoenix. "Alright, me and Laura are going to keep this guy busy. Phoenix, are you okay?" asked Naruto, to which the girl nodded. "Alright," he continued. "I know I said we wouldn't, but while we keep him busy, he need you, Rogue, to use your power. Phoenix will form a shield around you that should hold long enough to protect you in case we can't hold him and you need to run." "You know," said Rogue, "I do have my own enhanced strength and I can heal." "Yes, but not as well as Laura and I can," said Naruto, as said Logan clone dashed back into the fray. "We're not sure to what extent your other new abilities reach, and this is a situation where we do not want to find out their limits." With that, Naruto followed Laura, who had just been smashed into a car. "Right," said Phoenix, her attention focused on Rogue. "Are you ready?" Her question was punctuated by a growl from Hulk and a shout from Naruto, who was having a car slammed on top of him repeatedly. Laura leaped up and sent her claws into Hulk's back again, causing him to drop the car and attempt to get her off, buying enough time for Naruto to make a move to restrain the beast. "As I'll ever be," replied Rogue, removing the glove on her right hand before she was picked up by the telekinetic force and moved over to where Naruto and Laura had Hulk barely pinned to a wall, using Naruto's tails and Laura using her claws and pinning Hulk's feet to the ground. However, the green beast was already beginning to break free. As she floated up to him, Hulk looked at her, unsure. He didn't know this person. The other three had attacked him, but this was someone new. He was, in a word, curious. As she got closer, he turned back to his captors and began thrashing with new vigor. Unsure of what was to happen, Rogue got close enough and touched Hulk, using her whole hand. The familiar intense sensation rushed through her, but this time was the more violent than usual. Not near the level of when she had touched Naruto that first time, but still, it wasn't like it normally was. Hulk roared and began thrashing even more, the sensation only increasing his rage and making him grow even stronger. Rogue was screaming, and her three teammates watched as her skin took on a green pigmentation and she began to grow larger. She grew to the point where her clothing became very tight, but not like Dr. Banner where his ripped off of him. Her hair grew out longer and her muscles expanded, but didn't make her look like a bodybuilder, more like an athlete. Staggering backwards, she slipped her glove back on just as Naruto and Laura were thrown off Hulk. However, as angry as he was, Hulk seemed to be fatigued at the very least at Rogue's touch, though the girls seemed that way too. "Alright big boy," said Rogue. "Let's dance." Hulk roared and tried to slam his fists down on Rogue. Reaching up, she caught the attack. However, it seemed that while she was very close, her strength didn't quite match that of Hulk's. Gripping Hulk's arms, she found she did have enough strength to send the monster flying, putting him into a wall. "At least you aren't raging," said Naruto, coming up to regroup with her. "The power. It feels really good," said Rogue. "It feels like I can do anything. But if you're like him and can't control it, it's like a living nightmare." Naruto suddenly stopped and Rogue could tell his eyes had widened beneath his mask. "Then what if we could make his nightmare end?" asked Naruto. "It may be the way to get a very powerful ally on our side." "You're not thinking what I think you're thinking, are ya?" asked Rogue. Naruto just smirked beneath his mask before he pulled out a few more exploding tags and one that had nothing written on it. Quickly, he also pulled out a brush of ink and drew up some kanji onto it. When he was done, it looked just like an exploding tag as long as it was viewed from a distance. However, Naruto was hoping the man was smart enough to translate the kanji. Written in them was a note that explained his proposal of training to Banner and where to find Naruto. Now was the task of delivering it. Looking up from his work, Naruto saw Rogue and Hulk dashing at each other before leaping into the air. Because she was smaller, Rogue managed to get through Hulk's mid-air onslaught, tackling him and slamming him into the ground. Landing on top of him, Rogue began bashing his face, landing 3 punches before Hulk reached up and grabbed her, tossing her over his head, right into a wall, over the head of Laura, who began ripping and tearing at Hulk's chest as he stood. Lifting his leg, Hulk slammed his foot into Laura's stomach, sending her flying with such force that she slammed through the wall of the town's mall, sending her into one of the stores. Panic hit the inhabitants of the mall as they began screaming and running every which way. Walking through the hole made by Laura, Hulk entered the mall as well, causing all the panicked shoppers to dash away, wanting to put as much distance between them and the giant green beast as possible. Several of the more stupid teenagers decided to take pictures with their phones and cameras, but only proceeded to draw Hulk's attention to the flashes, which only made him angrier as they flashed in his eyes. Hulk roared and raised his arms to slam down on the teens, causing them to run, a few only just dodging the swing. "Get in there and evacuate those civilians, damn it," shouted General Ross into his radio. "That's the priority now. Leave that damn menace to the circus freaks." The soldiers that were hiding out around the area sprang into action, rushing into the mall to begin the evacuation. Standing up shakily, Laura pushed some rubble off of herself as several cuts on her body healed. Twisting her head to the side, a sickening crunch was heard before she cracked her neck to the other side. Her ears stopped ringing a moment later. Hearing a roar, she ran from the store, leaping over several and around several large messes she had made while flying through the place. Dashing out into the larger areas of the mall, she saw Hulk trying to bash some people. He managed to catch one and was about to crush the poor fellow, despite the fact he was being shot at. The green monster didn't even feel the bullets, as they apparently just bounced off of his skin. Hulk was about to slam down on the kid but was gripped around the neck by Naruto's tails, choking him. As Hulk tried to throw Naruto off, Rogue jumped in, throwing her fists in a flurry of punches to the green beast. Gripping Naruto's tail, Hulk ripped it off before spinning and smashing Naruto into Rogue, who both went flying through a store and out the other side, ending up on the other end of the mall, in the middle of the food court. Crashing into a table, Naruto and Rogue kept toppling on top of each other until Naruto managed to regain his senses and managed to land on all fours, and he slid a few more feet, his claws digging into the floor. Rogue, however, kept going until she slammed into one of the many restaurant counters where food could be purchased. "You okay?" asked Naruto, turning his head back toward her. "Fan-freaking-tastic," replied Rogue in her southern accent, rubbing her now green head. "What are we going to do?" she asked. "Here's the plan," said Naruto. "First, we lead him outside. After that, I want you to keep Hulk busy for a minute and then act like Hulk knocked you out. Are you good with that, or would you prefer to keep fighting this guy?" Looking through the gaping hole they made, Rogue saw Hulk backhand Laura away, sending her flying with incredible speed and force. "Yeah, I can deal with faking a knockout," the girl replied. "Alright," said Naruto, relaying the message to Phoenix, who sent it to Laura as well. "I'll meet you outside." In a swirl of wind and leaves, he vanished. Getting up, Rogue dashed through the holes in the walls. Hulk looked around him, finding himself surrounded by the three young ladies. Rogue and Laura would every now and then make quick hit and run attacks against him, leading him back outside, helped by the gentle hand of Phoenix's telekinetic powers. As they made their way toward the outside, they found themselves making less and less progress. Hulk was beginning to instead push the girls back again. Seeing this, Phoenix summoned as much power as she could muster, and her hair flew in all directions, flowing as though the red strands were flames. Hulk's eyes widened in protest, and he roared as he was flung from the building out into the streets outside. Walking toward the hole, it widened as Phoenix passed through it, her power ripping the concrete off the structure and making it fly around her body as though in orbit. Throwing one of the concrete pieces at Hulk, she watched the giant being simply catch it like one would a softball, before winding up and throwing it back at her with such force it was almost hard to see. Luckily, she set up a mental barrier around her body, making it seem like the concrete had indeed hit her in the head, when in reality it had actually bounced off the barrier that was so close to her body, it appeared like it had connected. Dropping to the ground, she pretended to be knocked out by the hit, following through with Naruto's plan. Rushing at Hulk, both Laura and Rogue jumped into the air, but were each caught in one of Hulk's hands. Growling, Hulk slammed their heads together, though he seemed to control himself enough to only do it hard enough to knock them out. In reality, neither girl would have been, however, the contact between their heads caused Rogue to absorb some of Laura's energy, causing the younger girl to be knocked unconscious for real, while Rogue simply went limp, faking it, and Hulk simply sneered and dropped the ladies. Suddenly, Naruto leaped out of nowhere and slammed a Rasengan straight into Hulk, blasting him into a wall on the other end of the street. Creating a few clones, Naruto gave them each an exploding tag before pulling out his message tag. One by one they dashed at Hulk and attached the tag before detonating it, totaling 6 explosions. Finally the original ran up to Hulk and jumped up, sticking his node onto Hulk's back, before the giant monstrosity grabbed one of his tails once again. Spinning around, Naruto was flung by him into the wall of the mall, before the masked blonde too feigned unconsciousness. Looking around, Hulk saw nobody else trying to fight him. Turning away, he began running before leaping into the air. He continued this a few more times, before launching himself like a missile, escaping his would-be captors. "God damn it!" shouted Ross, throwing his radio down. "Pick them up and see to it they're treated medically," he told the man closest to him before he stormed out of his miniature war room. He left before the man could even reply with a stiff yes sir and a salute. Everyone who knew what had just happened avoided Ross like the plague. They knew better than to talk to the man after they had lost the Hulk again. He fumed for a little while, before one of his troops entered to inform him that his hired hands were back, and while they all seemed fatigued, they were all in fairly good health. Ross didn't know whether to be thankful or furious at the thought. Thankful that no lives had been lost, and furious that they weren't at least out of commission for a while after fighting Hulk. Walking to the makeshift medical area, he saw all 4 of them in their hospital beds, attempting to get all doctors away from them. The only one who had so much as a bruise was Phoenix, as she didn't have the healing factor. The rest were simply sitting in silence. Laura was discussing something with Naruto, and Rogue was laying down, having turned back to normal and lost the adrenaline rush of the Hulk's power. "We lost," said Naruto angrily, though Ross couldn't tell it was fake anger. "Yes, I can see that," he replied. "I can assure you that even with this loss, you will still be rewarded for your services in the manner discussed. However, the new condition is that if we locate Banner again, you work for us again. Does that sound decent?" "Perfectly," said Naruto. "But next time, just approach us. I swear if you drug us again, Banner is going to be the least of your worries." "Right," said Ross, leaving the room for a second. He came back in a moment later with 2 cases. "The first is your money, the second is the device you were trying to obtain from Oscorp. Though I have no idea why you'd want this hunk of junk so badly," he said. "I have my reasons," replied Naruto. "Now General, if you wouldn't mind getting one of your fancy government helicopters to fly us back to New York, I have business to finish there." "I'll do you one better," said Ross as he reached into his pocket. "For your trouble, you all can fly back to New York, first class." Beneath his mask, Naruto smirked, as did the rest of his makeshift family. But when Ross left, Naruto's smirk fell. "Now then Phoenix, care to tell me what's going on with you?" The red-haired girl stiffened. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Naruto," she said, standing and stretching. "Let's see if I can refresh your memory a bit then," said Naruto. "Before we left you started to act strange, and then you bought something at the mall, keeping it concealed in a new purse. Now Hulk for some reason wouldn't crush you. Well, I'm glad of the latter, it is very suspicious." Something is going on with you, and I don't want to order you to tell me, but I will if you keep trying to deny it. Phoenix looked down in shame. Naruto, she said, I want so bad to tell you, but I don't know how. How about just saying it, said Naruto and cupping her chin in his hand. You can tell me anything, my little firebird. Phoenix gulped before sighing. I'm pregnant, said the girl, causing the other three to widen their eyes in shock. Are you sure? Asked Naruto. Isn't it a bit too soon to know something like that? Maybe if you were a normal human or even a mutant, said Phoenix, with a blush. But I think with you being so special, you're also much more potent. And it made me start having a few early symptoms. It was a pregnancy test that I was hiding in the purse. I didn't actually use it until a few days into our New York escapade. It showed up positive. Suddenly, Phoenix was pulled into a warm hug from her mate, who had pulled down his mask and kissed her forehead before looking her in the eyes. So we're having a kid? He asked. Phoenix just nodded yes and pulled Naruto back into the hug. Laura wasn't sure how to feel at this point. She really wasn't used to all these emotions, but she thought she felt a pang of something. She was unused to the feeling, but if she had to guess, she'd say that it felt a bit like jealousy. Well, congrats you two, said Rogue, who was also feeling a twinge of jealousy, though she merely denied it rather than try to comprehend it like Laura. I'd tell you both to get a room, but I think you've already done that to the extreme. Right, said Naruto, wrapping his arm around Phoenix. Let's go, we have a flight to catch. You and I will talk about this later, he said, aiming the last statement at Phoenix. The others just nodded, grabbing their things, Naruto grabbing the 2 cases that they had earned, and they were out the door. Waking up, Bruce Banner held his head, trying to fight back the awful headache he felt. Feeling something odd stuck to his back, he reached back and pulled it off, finding it to be a note of some kind, written in Japanese kanji. He vaguely recognized some of the symbols, but was too out of it still to translate. Putting it into his pocket for now, he looked around at the forested area he found himself in. Seeing a road nearby, he began to follow it, hoping it would lead him to someplace where he could rest and get some new clothes. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.